the box from left to right. Been placed in front of the appropriate chair. We'll start in a moment once you take your seat. You may want to do a brief mic check or two before we start.
Bill Dr. Walls.
Rich Whitney.
Adam Angievsky.
Michael White. Dan Proft. Randy Stubbleby.
Adam, can you check your mic again?
Adam Angievsky.
Everybody hear that okay? Just as well? Okay. I have to speak a little louder on that one, Adam. It sounds a little bit softer. Okay. Random drawing. All right, you ready, Wayne? Okay.
Check 1, 2.
All right. Welcome to the Illinois Gubernatorial Debate here. Candidates for governor, thank you for coming. My name is Christina Tobin. I'll be moderating the debate. Each candidate will be permitted a 2-minute opening statement. The order for these statements were determined by random drawing. There will be 5 questions in total, 3 determined beforehand, and 2 from suggestions made in writing by the audience prior to the debate. Each candidate will have 2 minutes to answer each question. If there's enough time left, we'll be able to include a 3rd question from the audience. The format will be a variation of the cumulative time debate format. Each candidate will have 3 opportunities total to take 1 more minute after each candidate has answered a question to offer a rebuttal or expand upon their previous answer. For some examples, you can use your extra minutes for the last 3 questions. You may also use any of your extra minutes on the same question after each candidate has had an opportunity to use 1. In order to encourage a free exchange of ideas. After the question period, each candidate will have an opportunity to make a 2-minute closing statement. This debate has been sponsored by Libertarian Restoration Project. It has also been sponsored by Republic Media TV, of which they have offered the technological things we have today. It's also been sponsored by the Free and Equal Elections Foundation. Let's start with our first question. From left to right, Mr. Rich Whitney. How would you...
Are we doing opening statement?
I'm sorry, excuse me, first time. I would like to do an opening statement of 2 minutes each. My apologies. And we would like to start with Mr. Rich Whitney. Thank you.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, as we look at the political scene today, let's ask ourselves, what do we see? We see a nation in which a majority of Americans oppose the illegal war and occupation of sovereign nations, and yet still they persist. We see a majority opposing the colossal waste of our resources on means of destruction and bank bailouts, and still they persist. We see a majority opposing a government that spies on its own people, violates long-standing constitutional rights, and seeks to create an oppressive national ID system while hiding its own dirty secrets from the people. Yet still, there's no change that you can believe in. In Illinois, a majority favors overhauling our tax system to reduce our over-reliance on property taxes to fund our schools, to make it more progressive, and ensure that we provide essential services to the disabled, disadvantaged, children, our veterans, adequately fund public workers' pensions, and provide quality education to all. And yet instead, we've had year after year of smoke and mirrors budgeting, trying to build an entire state budget on gambling, drinking, and smoking. The majority of Illinoisans support single-payer health care as the solution to our health care crisis, and yet no action, nothing gets done. A majority understands that we have an emergency need to completely overhaul how we produce and use energy and transport ourselves and our products, and yet all we see are baby steps toward that future. In each case, the underlying fundamental problem causing the disconnect between what the people need and want and what the government actually does is the institutional barrier of the Democratic and Republican parties and the giant banks and multinational corporations that bankroll them. We in the Green Party and the Whitney campaign will be standing firm against that to give you a real alternative in 2010. Thank you.
Thank you, Rich Whitney, Green Party candidate for governor. Next, Mr. Bill Doc Walls III.
Good evening. Ladies and gentlemen, all of America is in the throes of a severe economic downturn, and we're in serious financial distress. In fact, every legitimate economy evaluation agency, public or private, has now acknowledged that this recession, which ripened in December of 2007, is the worst recession since World War II. In spite of nearly $2 trillion in federal stimulus packages, production is down, employers are not hiring, consumers are not spending, banks are not lending. More than 10 million Americans have either lost their jobs or been forced to settle for part-time employment. The lines at the unemployment office are longer than ever before. Millions of Americans are losing their homes to bank foreclosure. The stock market is brutalizing investors. Businesses are folding. We're at $1.4 trillion in a federal deficit, and our national debt is $11.4 trillion. But despite all of that, there's hope. Why? Because we have a few key assets at our disposal. One is our capital budget program. And the capital budget program is a spending program that addresses capital projects which develop and maintain assets with a long economic life. 5 areas of capital concentration: environment, energy, and technology, education, transportation, economic development, and state facilities. If we use that money wisely, particularly the $2 billion that was left discretionary to be spent on those things that hadn't been anticipated, we can work our way out of this. We can use that $2 billion to fund grants to businesses, to help those businesses grow, to help those businesses create jobs. For every $20,000 that we spend in a business, we can create one job. Our job is to turn this economy around by building revenue, not by taxing. Because we have to grow this economy through careful, conscientious decision-making. Ladies and gentlemen, the time is now. I'm Bill Doc Walls, and I'm running for governor as a Democrat in the February primary.
Thank you, Bill. Adam Andrzejewski, please.
Thank you so much. My name is Adam Andrzejewski. It's a very difficult to pronounce Polish last name. I want you to know that you can call me Adam. I grew up with other hurdles and challenges. I grew up in Herscher, Illinois. And Herscher is a small town that most people here in the state can't find on the map. But that's okay. I grew up as the oldest of 7 kids. The small town banker told my mother that the family would never go to college because my family would never have the money. We got our degrees. I grew up walking beans, detasseling corn, and baling hay, and it is a work ethic that we must bring to Springfield. You see, I don't have Springfield experience. Those with Springfield experience, they hike your taxes, they bond you further, it's more spending, more gambling, and sometimes with Springfield experience, they go to jail. My experience is about starting a business from scratch with my brother, growing the revenue of that business to $20 million and creating 156 new jobs. My experience then became building one of the most successful good government movements in state history. It's called For the Good of Illinois, where I trained an army of local volunteers to ask their local units of government to post their checkbooks. This posted $1 billion of public spending on public websites, giving public spending scrutiny, and giving you, the taxpayer, respect. We must bring that to Springfield as well. You see, I am a real Republican reformer. In the days after Rod Blagojevich and George Ryan, I've proved that I'm clean of special influence. I've posted my tax return on my website. And I encourage all the candidates running for the top job here in Illinois government to follow suit. I need your help, your vote, your support, and your mandate, and together we can go to Springfield and reform Springfield. Thank you. I look forward to the debate and answering your questions here this evening.
Thank you, Adam Andrzejewski, Illinois Republican candidate for governor. Michael White, please.
How are you? My name is Michael White. I'm an independent candidate for governor. That's a hard one to beat right there. Though I went to Bishop McNamara in Kankakee, which is very near Herscher, and we beat them often in football. I've been traveling the state a lot and coming down to southern Illinois quite a bit, and it's, being born and raised in Kankakee, you see the cornfields, and you start to remember what it was like, because I live in the far north now in Wisconsin, and how Illinois, what I think it used to be, and we seem to have lost that. And I'm hoping everyone here has great ideas to change Illinois. Because we need new people in office, we need innovation, we need people who are going to change things and actually stir things up, because it's been the same old same. We've had enough. Enough of the status quo, enough of politicians who really cannot relate to working class people, enough of the enough of the mismanagement of our budget. And it's going to take different people, new people in office. So whether you're interested in me as an independent doesn't matter. Because you need to find someone different than what the parties are offering. And that's not only as governor, in the legislature, as mayor, in your city council. It's time to change things up. How long do we have to put up with it? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Michael White, Illinois Independent Candidate for Governor. Dan Proft, please.
Thank you. Thanks for everybody coming out tonight. My name is Dan Proft. I'm a Republican candidate for governor. For the last 15 years, I've been in the Illinois political arena, run political campaigns at every level of elective office. I've served in state government, local government, so I understand those landscapes. I understand the interaction of the various levels of government. Last 5 years, I've been a small business person. I started a public relations business that I operated up until deciding to undertake this endeavor. I did some radio work in on WLS in Chicago as well. I did a weekly political commentary for Don Wade and Roma, their morning show, and did some spot fill-in work. I'm the board chairman of Operation Homefront Illinois, which is a nonprofit that serves active duty military families and wounded warriors coming home. And none of what I just said has anything to do with this race. Because this election is not about politicians' biographies. We have all led rich, interesting lives. I'm sure mine is no more rich and interesting than yours. The challenge for any candidate in this race is to take the fight to the established political order that has dominated this state for 3 generations and has destroyed Illinois' economy. And that's what's happened. In the last year alone, we have lost 285,000 private sector jobs in Illinois. Public sector headcount, status quo. You have a public sector that is cannibalizing the private sector in Illinois. People who play by the rules and who have been gamed by the system. So the way to challenge the established political order is to define a constituency that has not been served by Republicans or Democrats in the last 3 generations. Those people who play by the rules, the people who pay their mortgage on time, budgeted for the home they bought, but are still on the hook to pay for the irresponsible actions of others. The people who lost 50% or more of their 401k, but are still on the hook to pay for multiple public pensions for the politically connected. If we have candidates who speak with moral clarity instead of parsing words, who sharpen the lines of distinction between themselves and the established political order, then we can take our government back. And that's what we must do in this cycle. Thank you.
Thank you, Illinois Republican candidate for governor, Dan Proft. And next, Randall Stuffelby.
Folks, what you see here tonight, in my opinion, is probably one of the most unprecedented meetings that we've ever held in the state of Illinois. Before you, you have Democrat, you have Republican, you have Green Party, you have Independent, and you have Constitution Party. I don't know that this has ever happened in Illinois before, and I congratulate and commend each one of our candidates that are here tonight. I am a Constitution Party candidate for governor, and I'm absolutely amazed at what is happening and what is transpiring, not only in the state of Illinois, but across this nation. I retired after 22 years in the Marine Corps, and I could tell when I got to Illinois, because my teeth would be rattling, and the gas prices were the highest in the country. And I had to ask myself, why is it that that is true? We have the highest gas prices and certainly not the best roads in the country. And the one and only word that I could come up with is there is a lack of accountability. I have one word for Illinois, and that's accountability. As a Marine, I know something about accountability. I was held accountable, and I know how to hold people accountable. We had more revenue raised than our budget has called for over the past several years, and yet we go further and further in the hole. How is that possible? We have a constitutional mandate to balance the budget, and yet, is it balanced? I think not. And we have a two-party machinery here in Illinois that I had to take a look at and say, hey, it wasn't just the Republicans, it wasn't just the Democrats, both have conspired to drive us to the dirt. And so I felt I could not be a part of that duopoly system, and I felt that the Constitution Party best represented those values, and I now have an understanding that I stand for and will uphold the Constitution, both the federal and the state.
Thank you, Illinois Constitution Party candidate for Governor Randall Stufflebeam. Now moving on to our first question. Rich Whitney, you'll be the first to answer. The question is, how would you fix the budget deficit?
My approach to the budget deficit is threefold. First of all, we need to look at how we're being taxed in the state of Illinois. Illinois has one of the most regressive tax systems in the United States. We're taxing the wrong people. If you combine sales, income, property, local taxes, you put it all together, we are taxing the bottom 20% of income earners at more than double the rate of the top 1%. And then we wonder why we're going broke. I stand for the quote-unquote radical notion of having a more progressive tax system in Illinois. You know, the same kind of idea that Adam Smith championed, the founding theoretician of modern capitalism. The way we're going to get there is to pass something like last year's House Bill 750. I would recommend to the listeners to visit the Center for Tax and Budget Accountability, which lays this out in greater detail. But basically, it is a comprehensive plan to halt our over-reliance on property taxes for the way we fund our schools by putting more of the burden on the state income tax, and at the same time making it more progressive so that middle and lower income earners actually pay the same or lower taxes than they do now overall. It includes a plan for 20% to 25% property tax abatements per school district. In addition, that's one phase. Second thing that I'm going to be campaigning for is the notion of a state bank. Right now, every state in the United States is having the same problems that we are here in Illinois, struggling to address their budget deficit, except one, and that is North Dakota. The reason? They have a state bank. Instead of taking tax revenues and giving that to the private banks so that they can make more money off of our tax revenues, they have a state bank. They are the ones that invest. They can spend money on state programs directly from their own bank. They can borrow from the Federal Reserve at 1%. They can stimulate their economy. As a result, they have a budget surplus instead of a budget deficit.
Thank you, Rich Whitney. Bill Doc Walls.
Once again, good evening. Illinois has a spending problem. Over the last 4 years, our economy has risen by 30%. We have to figure out how to spend less while maintaining the jobs and maintaining the programs that we so richly deserve and so desperately need at this point in time. As we wean ourselves off of those programs, it's critical and essential that we begin to look towards education, rehabilitation, skill development, and less spending on incarceration. It costs us $1.8 billion a year to house 44,000 inmates, many of whom are nonviolent offenders, people who are caught with marijuana. But we're spending $40,000 a year to incarcerate them here in Illinois in this day and age. Additionally, we have to grow our economy. We live in a global economy, and we're not participating. We have to give businesses in Illinois the wherewithal to go into the global economy and bring money, jobs, and opportunity right back here. We have to increase our revenue. We're 44th when it comes to GDP growth. That's insufficient. That's not good enough. We have to focus on building businesses. Cleaner, greener, more energy efficient, more technologically advanced manufacturing plants. We have to make certain that the money that we do spend is spent for all of the right reasons to move Illinois forward. I am not in favor of additional tax increases. We're taxed enough. We're already the 6th most regressive taxing state in this nation. Tax, 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 tax. We need to create more jobs, jobs, jobs.
Thank you. Bill Dockworth. Adam Andrzejewski, please.
It's great to hear a Democrat that doesn't have a 3-letter word for all the problems in Springfield. In Springfield, those Democrats, they have that 3-letter word, and it's the word TAX, tax. We need to understand the scope of this problem. It's a $10 billion budget deficit. Ronald Reagan once said that if you gave your wife $1,000 to spend and go shopping, and if you gave her that every single day, she would be gone for the next 3,000 years to spend $1 billion, and that puts $10 billion in perspective. So how would I balance that off? I'm the only candidate that can do it with no new taxes and no new borrowing and bonding to the taxpayer. How we do it is by opening the books in Springfield, every dime online in real time. If we can see the spending, we can cut the wasteful spending and be able to hold the line on taxes. And it's critical policy. If we can't see it, we can't fix it. The Democrats have all the power, and they say there's no place to cut. So we need to see that. That's the first step. The second step is a top-to-bottom forensic audit of state spending. The small state of Kansas did it. They saved $1 billion. We can save $3 to $5 billion. I can do those 2 steps without Michael Madigan, without the Chicago Democrats, with your support, your mandate, and with my pen. From there, cuts. The Department of Commerce and Economic Opportunity, it's $1 billion. The highest we ranked in job growth last year, 10 years, 20 years, is 44th to 48. We need jobs, not a jobs bureaucracy. I'll tackle pensions. If the pension benefit is vested, it's a promise. If it's not vested, it's on the table. The Civic Federation of Chicago says we can save $165 billion over the next 35 years. In terms of other cuts, $4 billion of grants outside Medicare, outside healthcare and education. If we can't put a result to it, if we can't measure it, I'll zero it out. We need to bring spending reform to Springfield, and then I'll cut property taxes.
Thank you, Adam. Michael White, please.
Well, Adam, I'll hire you when I get there, okay? It sounds like that's some good ideas. It is about jobs. I mean, literally it is about jobs. Everybody's screaming for jobs, and it takes jobs. Why does it take jobs? Jobs are what drive the revenue. Corporations drive revenue. We have to make sure that we're bringing corporations back into the fold and making sure companies move to Illinois as opposed to moving them out. I think it was Maytag down here recently just left the area. Why didn't we keep them in this area? Why did we let them go? Those were jobs. It would have been cheaper for the state to help that company stay here as opposed to letting them leave. Now we're paying unemployment, probably Medicaid, to help those families out. As we increase jobs, unemployment goes down, Medicaid goes down, our deficit starts to go down. Whether we're going to do a tax, I don't know, because I don't know what Quinn is going to do between now and when one of these gentlemen get into office. So it's hard to say what's going to happen there. So that's why jobs are so important. Along with jobs, as everyone will probably say here, is to reduce spending. We have to get spending under control, no doubt about it. And whether you're doing a forensic audit or whatever it takes, it's going to take someone to go in there and to make a realistic look at it and say, this is what we're going to do. No one here is going to be able to do that because we have not seen the books. When Quinn took office, he said he didn't even know what the books looked like. Well, he works in Springfield, for goodness sake. And it took him 6 months to figure it out. So you can imagine the mess that this state is in. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Dan Croft, please.
Yeah, hiring accountants and describing the need to reform spending is not addressing the budget deficit. If you want to make Illinois a growth state, and if you want to bring our obligations in line with our assets, then you need to get tax and spend policy right. Adam says he's the only candidate who can do this without a tax increase. He's right, because I'm proposing cutting taxes. We should cut taxes on work and investment. I propose cutting the income tax in half, cutting the corporate income tax in half, eliminating the state death tax. The only way long-term, the only chance long-term for this state's economic viability, the only way to bring this state back from the precipice of economic collapse is to reduce the tax burden on work and investment, to encourage entrepreneurship, to reward positive risk-taking behavior. Mr. Whitney said North Dakota is the only state with a budget surplus. Wrong. Indiana has a $1 billion budget surplus, and Governor Mitch Daniels did two things. He reduced the property tax burden, and he slowed the rate of state spending growth. Precisely the same two things we need to do here. So I talked to you about what I would do on taxes that drive our business climate and have driven it into the ground. On the spending side, one-time cuts doesn't get you home. You need to impose a spending discipline on Springfield that it will never impose on itself. And the way you do that is by imposing statutory spending caps, like California had in the 80s, like Colorado had in the 90s. You free state spending at its current level. You only allow for year-over-year growth equal to population plus inflation. That's it. And if you have revenues in a particular year that exceed that allowable growth, that money is rebated to taxpayers. No rainy day funds, no slush funds, no funny accounting. They are on that discipline in perpetuity. Tax cuts and spending caps. And also, as Adam correctly pointed out, no more borrowing against tomorrow to pay for yesterday. That is how you address the short-term budget problem, and that is how you provide for long-term economic growth in Illinois.
Thank you, Dan. Randy Stuppelbein, please. We have to finish all six, everybody first. Thank you.
Down, boy. Along with my opening comments, again, I've got one word for Illinois, and that's accountability. In 2006, when I was running for governor as a write-in candidate, there's a man by the name of William Holland. He is our Auditor General. And in that year, he produced several reports, the first of which he found across 6 or 7 state departments that there was nearly $7 to $8 million totally unaccounted for. Checks that had been written, no idea who they had been written to. And then immediately following up with that, about 2 months later, another report was produced in that same year, and it reflected another $2 to $3 million across several state departments, totally unaccounted for. And to my knowledge today, not one single head has ever rolled, not one single indictment has ever been issued. And Mr. Holland had produced those reports and sent them specifically to our Attorney General, Lisa Madigan's office, and of course to the Rodney Blagojevich office. And today, again, nothing. Good friend, Democrat guy here says, we have a spending problem. I'm sorry, I don't remember your name. Dockwald did. And that's right. But we don't only have a spending problem. If this was a battleship, we got so many stinking holes in the side, the ship is going down, and we got to get these holes plugged up. If we want to cut our taxes, which I will do, we got to first plug up these holes and quit this unconstitutional spending and allowing for this money to go totally unaccounted for. We need a governor in office that's not afraid to hold people accountable, that knows how to do it, and will utilize the office of the Auditor General for exactly that purpose. To audit our state departments, find out where this money's going, and then act upon it.
Thank you, Randy. And now if anybody would like to use one of their 3 rebuttal statements. Okay. We start to the left on the first question. Rich Whitney raised his hand first. After all 6 questions, Rich, please.
Okay, thank you. You know, it's real easy to stand in front of voters and say, yes, I want to cut your taxes, I want to cut spending, as generalities. But we've heard that before, haven't we? This is the delusion that we're going to be able to solve our fiscal problem in the state of Illinois by cutting spending. And as a matter of fact, it's the wrong thing to do during a recession. As a matter of fact, if we attempted to close, according to the Center for Tax and Budget Accountability and their analysis, if we attempted to close the budget deficit just by cutting spending, we'd lose about 125,000 plus jobs. If you want to see the effects of cutting spending, look at what Governor Quinn just did to get us through after they didn't pass the budget. Devastating cuts, Department of Natural Resources, cuts to student grants, devastating cuts to education, prisons left unsafe, our most vulnerable members of society, the disabled and disadvantaged facing devastating cuts, health clinics facing closure. That's what you want? Then just talk about cutting spending and don't talk about how we're going to solve the revenue problem in the state of Illinois.
Adam Angievsky, please.
The amount of money that we would save on a forensic audit is $3 to $5 billion. And what that represents is 5 to 6% on the low end of state spending on a $52 billion budget. It's waste, fraud, misallocation, duplication, graft, and abuse of spending of your money. Dollars should follow people in need and fully fund everybody that has a legitimate need. That audit would cost approximately $100 million, and it would be paid for in real time as we go on this tremendous savings. This is an investment in being able to fiscally manage our dollars correctly. Dan talks about spending caps and tax decreases. You got to get that through the General Assembly. And tax cuts, you got to prove them. Transparency opens up that spending so you can see it, so you can prove that it's wasteful spending. And tax caps need legislative approval, and they can violate that cap just through legislation each time.
Thank you, Adam. Bill Doc Walls, please.
Some don't understand that there are many ways to cut spending without eliminating jobs and without eliminating services. Let me give you a quick few illustrations. One, we can go to a 4-day-a-week, 10-hour-a-day, 40-hour work week and save money. We can get energy-efficient light bulbs. We can go 50% paperless in Illinois, in the offices of the state government. We can also ask businesses that do business with the state of Illinois to reduce their profit margins. We asked employees to take furlough days. That was a backhanded pay cut. But we did not go to businesses that do business with the state of Illinois and say to them, yes, overhead, it's okay. Profit, it's okay. But no one should get rich at the taxpayer's expense during these tough economic times. Rather than receive 30% profit, as many do, accept 15 or 10% profit. Improve our bidding process. There are ways to cut spending without eliminating services and without eliminating jobs.
Tim Croft, please.
Thank you. A couple things. First of all, this forensic audit nonsense, you have to get individual spending cuts through the General Assembly too, not just spending caps and tax cuts. You don't get to cut programs by executive fiat. You should learn a little bit more about state government. Second, what Mr. Whitney talked about, these are pipe dreams. Oh, really? In the state of Maine, controlled by Democrats, both the governor and the state legislature there, they were realizing that they couldn't compete with their neighboring states in terms of attracting business. So the state of Maine cut their state income tax, and they cut $300 million out of their budget, a big number in a small state like Maine, because they want to grow in perpetuity going forward. They want to be a jobs and business magnet. They don't want to circle the drain like moribund states such as Illinois do. This is not about one-time spending cuts. It is about system change with respect to all of the big ticket systems in state government, Medicaid, K-12, transportation infrastructure, and our 5-state pension systems, every single one of which is financially unsustainable in its current form. If you are not talking about system change in state government, then you are not serious about reordering how state government operates in Illinois.
Thank you, Dan. Randall Stuffleby, please.
As stated
As stated before, Illinois does not have a revenue problem. Over the past couple of years, primarily due to high gas prices, we have had a surplus of money coming in that wasn't even budgeted for. We have enough revenue coming in. We got to plug the system up from the other end. Money that is going out unaccounted for. This whole pay-to-play, you remember that term used 4 years ago? It's still there. The mechanism, the machinery is still there. We could create a lot of different jobs and funding sources. For instance, how about our prisons? It was mentioned earlier. How about a self-supporting prison system? Instead of taxing the taxpayers more money to support those who robbed from us to begin with, how about making them self-supporting? There's a myriad of ways of creating a system where we don't have to spend much, that we don't have to see that money continue to go out through the bottom of the ship. We're getting enough in. Let's hold people accountable to what we're already getting.
Thank you, Randy. May I remind you we have a total of 4 more questions and 3 total rebuttals. So Adam Andrzejewski, if you'd like to use your second rebuttal, please do.
Dan talks about system change, and that word strikes me very close to what Barack Obama used when he ran for governor. When he ran for president. He ran on the word change. Well, Dan's a PR guy, and he adds the word system ahead of system change, and it sounds real good. But now there's no detail to it. His detail is he'll cut taxes, and that's a nice soundbite. But it's not sound policy. He also said he wouldn't borrow. So if there's a $10 billion budget deficit, and if you cut taxes by 50%, you've just blown the budget out in state government. I know about leverage and a power relationship. In terms of opening the books and a forensic audit of those books, that puts Michael Madigan back on his heels. He has to defend his spending over the past 6 years. That is how we even out an unequal power relationship in Springfield. I will take the fight to Michael Madigan.
Thank you, Adam. Dan Croft, second and third rebuttals.
Adam is a nice young man, but it just shows how little he knows about state government. First of all, I've offered specific tax cuts, I've offered specific spending cuts, but I've also offered system change ideas with specificity, like statutory caps. That is not a bromide, that is a policy choice. Secondly, you asked about a $10 billion budget deficit. How would you fill that in the short term? Okay, let's talk about that. We have $8.8 billion in federal stimulus funds that this state has received, which is our money back from the federal government, because we're a donor state. That money should go to pay for Illinois' obligations and interests for Illinois, not DC's priorities for Illinois. So you use that money to deal with short-term obligations like paying Medicaid bills, like paying for legitimate services for disabled folks, to leverage medium-term system change when it comes to K-12. And I've got a program for K-12 that I can't explain in a minute, but it's on my website. I've got a program for Medicaid reform, which I can't explain in a minute, but it's on my website. I have specific ideas for all of the big-ticket systems in state government that I routinely talk about. And yes, you can do this, and we must do this while reducing the tax burdens on productive folks in this state.
Thank you, Dan Croft. And now moving on to our second question. Start with Bill Dockwalls. The question is, what reforms are needed in Illinois' public education system?
The first thing we have to do in Illinois in terms of education is commit ourselves to providing 51% of the funding for public education. In counties like Cook, taxpayers, 50% of their real estate taxes go to fund education, and you still have unequal education in a lot of different areas. Education is one of those things that we can't do without. It's critical, it's essential. We have to provide a superior public school education for each and every individual child. And that transcends the development of modern buildings with state-of-the-art equipment and facilities which are conducive to safe and potentially productive educational environments. We have to do more than warehouse students and teach them reading, writing, math, and science. We have to teach them the humanities. the arts. We have to teach them civics. We have to teach them sportsmanship. Those things go a long way in terms of developing people. We have to teach our children to follow their hearts, their minds, and their talents so that they can decide who and what they want to be in life and be satisfied with themselves as human beings. We have to make a very serious commitment to education and have one curriculum all across the state so that children in the 3rd grade in Centralia are learning pretty much the same thing as children in 3rd grade in the city of Chicago, so that their skills are interchangeable. We have to protect our teachers. We have to give them the support they need to actually be the captain in that classroom. We have to use greater technology in those classrooms and prepare our children for the, for the real world. We cannot take education lightly. Business follows education. Business owners want a qualified, educated workforce.
Thank you. Adam Andrzejewski, please.
Again, system change is a nice soundbite, just like Barack Obama's change without the detail. In order to have true system change in Illinois, you've got to take the fight to Michael Madigan. And I'll take the fight to him with my pen by opening up his books and proving the waste, the fraud, the corruption, and the abuse. Now, Dan says these ideas take a long time to explain. I put up an issues tab on my website where you can hold me accountable, where you can see my policies so you can review them and give them scrutiny, and Dan doesn't have an issues tab. Rich Whitney has a nice one. Randy Stufflebeam has a nice one. And I think that's good policy. Hold me accountable. Don't trust me, give me scrutiny. In education, 4 things. Top to bottom transparency so we can see the $22 billion and where it's spent here in Illinois within public education. The second thing is, it's a recession and our private schools need some help. It's tough times for them. I would triple the private school income tax credit from $500 to $1,500 to help our private schools. They spend 1/3 less money, the results are 1/3 better. We've capped charter schools here in Illinois. Charter schools are a unique type of public school. There are 10,000 kids in Chicago public schools on waiting lists wanting a unique type of public school called a charter school. Let's bust the cap. Let's give them a world-class education. We do very well on graduation rates in Illinois outside of the city of Chicago. And in every single market, like Chicago, like out of Rockford and out of Peoria and places like that, dollars need to start following children. As governor, the state portion of that spending for Chicago public schools is 35 cents on every dollar. Mayor Daley's negotiated a good deal for himself with your dollars. I would take those dollars on a per-child basis and deliver them to the classroom rather than to the bureaucracy. If the taxpayers of Chicago want a heavy education bureaucracy in Chicago in markets like that, then they can fund it. Our dollars will start following children. Thank you.
Thank you. Michael White, please.
Schools, fundraising. Where does lottery money go? That's what I want to know. It's simple as that. We have a lot of tax dollars going into education, and I think Adam said it best. Where's that money going? We need to start, first of all, empowering children. How do we empower children? From the first time they enter school, they need to be empowered. There's gangs growing in Chicago. You hear it on the news today. It's because there's no jobs for teenagers, and teenagers aren't empowered from day one to think that they're going to actually get to college and someone's going to help them pay for it. The state needs to stand up, step in. We need to tell kids from day one of school, you get the grade, you stay out of trouble, we're going to give you points to pay for school. If you don't have a goal in life, you're never going to succeed in school, you're never going to succeed in life. I've just lost another taxpayer. It's bad for the state, it's bad for us as people. Charter schools are an interesting concept, but I haven't seen a lot of data that really supports charter schools. And if they are so great, we need to change our public school system to match a charter school system. What are we waiting for? Schools are about children and taking care of children, their education. And I believe many times that we have failed them. I will say though, in Lake County, the school that my son goes to, I'm very proud of that school. I think they do a wonderful job. He's going to college, hopefully next year, if we can afford it, depending on what he picks. But it's those types of things. That school is empowering. Parents are empowering. Parents are involved in this process as well. But as a state, we have to tell kids from day one that they have a future, because many children don't believe they have one.
Thank you. Dan Proft, please.
Thank you. Well, in terms of Adam wanting to hold people accountable, he should be accountable for his own words. So you can go to my website now, especially the folks that are watching this through live stream, prof2010.com. Right there on the right side, you'll see issues tabs: your money, your rights, your business, your schools, that detail all of the things that I'm talking about with great specificity today, and have detailed over the course of the 3 months that I've been running for governor. We've been in many candidate forums together, so Adam knows that I have specifics. He's just, for whatever reason, pretending that he doesn't. My specific on K-12 reform, as I've articulated, beginning with when I announced my plan at a Black Baptist church on the south side of Chicago at 104th and Vincennes, to bring school choice statewide, to end the discrimination in this state against children based on their household income and their address. This is what I've been talking about. This has been central to my campaign, because one of the things that we know is that if you get K-12 right and you get kids on a path to be successful, independent adults, then you obviate a lot of the problems that occur later in life. You reduce the social costs that we pay for kids relegated to second-class citizen status because they never even had the opportunity to earn a quality education that gave them reading, writing, and critical thinking skills, which are kind of important in our global digital economy. So what I've proposed specifically is that the state's portion of funding for every child who qualifies for the free or reduced school lunch program in this state would go directly to the family in the form of a check to be used for educational expenses. And the family could take that money and send their child to any school they want, public, private, parochial, charter, whatever. We have a system very similar to what I'm talking about actually in place right now. You may have heard of it. It's called college. That's where the money follows the kids. We have the best university system in the free world. We have one of the best in the country right here in Illinois. We have some of the worst K-12 systems because we invest in bureaucracies, not families.
Thank you. Committee Stufflebeam, please.
Well, again, the word accountability rears its ugly head. You know, it was mentioned earlier that we've got a lotto system here in the United States, or in the state of Illinois. And why did it get here? It was supposed to subsidize education. And I got to tell you, my opinion is, quite frankly, that we probably had a better education system back before the lotto even came in, when all this extra money was supposed to come in. Probably a lot of people would side with that opinion, that we've somehow getting worse and worse and worse. And then it was mentioned about property taxes. Interesting. Property taxes. We got the lotto. We've got tuition. How many people here pay to have your kids go to public school? I've actually had to funnel some money in, a couple $100, and I thought I'm supposed to get a free education for all these tax dollars that are going in. Where is it going? That's a good question. We're going to have to start holding people accountable. And not only for the money issue, but I would change it with our teachers getting pay raises for tenure instead of merit. I would see a merit-based pay system here in the state of Illinois, and not tenure just because you happen to hang on long enough. And also, the idea of public, charter, private, and homeschooling. I got to tell you, stumping the state 4 years ago, going to the state fairs, I could pretty well tell you and pick out to you who were homeschooled. These kids would come up and engage in conversation. So I would certainly include homeschooling as a system of support that we need to get into place. And rather than getting the state to step up to education, we need to encourage parents to step up to education, to start heading to the school boards and find out what your schools are teaching your kids. We are so far removed to letting the state take care of us all. We need to start taking care of ourselves and our children and start stepping up to the plate. And as governor, I would be encouraging all of our citizens to step up to that plate.
Thank you. Rich Whitney, please.
Thank you. Step number one, opt out of No Child Left Behind. This is an albatross around the neck of our public school system. It's an unfunded mandate. We don't need it. Every teacher you speak to complains about it. It's teaching to the test. If you're talking about what reforms we need, that's number one. Secondly, here's one area where I do agree we can have spending cuts. Excuse me. One of the things that we need to do is, I think, reduce the over-bureaucratized local school system. We have too many school districts in Illinois. They overlap. It's too much administrative overhead. That's one thing I think we need to look at, is consolidate school districts. But third and most fundamentally, we do need to change the way we fund our public schools. Right now, Illinois funds its public schools. The state of Illinois only provides somewhere in the 30 percentile of the funds for public schools, about the lowest rate in the United States. And guess what? As Mr. Walls alluded to, we actually have among the most unequal school systems in the United States, with differences of $19,000 plus per pupil between the richest and the poorest districts. That is not sustainable. That is fundamentally unfair to our children. We cannot continue with the system. And why? Because it's a system that relies on local property taxes to fund our schools more than the vast majority of other states. We need to change this. The plan that I support, last year's House Bill 750 from the Center on Tax and Budget Responsibility, is a plan that is supported by groups as diverse as A+ Illinois, Voices for Illinois Children, which is supported by groups like the Illinois Farm Bureau, all the way to the Chicago Urban League. Everybody agrees we need the way to change the way that we fund our school system in Illinois. This plan would allow us to lower our property taxes by 20 to 25%. More of the money would come through the state income tax, and it would ensure that the funding was no shell game like the lottery. 51% of the funding has to come from the state, meeting the foundation requirement of the Education Funding Advisory Board.
Bill Dock-Walls, so rebuttal.
Right. In terms of education in charter schools and private schools, I understand the pain when a person sends their child to private school and still has to pay taxes to send other children to public school. We can't develop boutique schools, though. We need superior public school educations for each and every individual child. Why? We just went through a scandal with the University of Illinois where the well-connected, the politically connected, were able to get their children in there even when they were deficient. If we had vouchers, every politician would have their child at the front of the line to send their child to the best possible schools. And guess what? Average people would have to settle for mediocre schools. Let's be like Virginia, a state that has great schools across the board. You can close your eyes and send your child to any school and know that they're going to get a superior education. Let's make that our commitment, not boutique schools and charter schools and vouchers.
Thank you. And now moving on to our third question, Adam Andrzejewski, you're first. Given that the Chicago ban on handguns is currently in front of the U.S. Supreme Court, what do you think will be the outcome of that case? And how would you, as governor, respond to it?
Well, I don't know what the United States Supreme Court is going to do on that case. But running for governor here in the state of Illinois, I am pro Second Amendment. And I'll tell you what I'll do when the concealed carry law comes to my desk. I'll sign it. Counties across Illinois, there's a grassroots mandate building on the Second Amendment for concealed carry in Illinois, and it's the right policy. 48 states have some version of it. Illinois doesn't have it. We're only one of 2 states. I understand what the Second Amendment is. I grew up hunting and fishing in the small town of Herscher. Second Amendment isn't for hunting and fishing, although it's nice. The Second Amendment is there to protect your life, your liberty, and your property. It's there to even out an unequal power relationship. My wife's 5 feet on a good day. She's redheaded, and she's Irish. And the only way that she can even out an unequal power relationship is through a handgun or a gun. So, as governor, I recognize the true purpose of that. I will work to bring that policy to Illinois, and it's substantial and good policy. I understand that the Second Amendment protects our First Amendment. I'm running for governor. I like to talk. And I think the First Amendment will go if the Second Amendment also goes. Thanks.
Thank you. Michael White, please.
Well, I can't say that I support the Second Amendment because it just is. And you don't have to support it because it is our Constitution. I believe it's the way things are. It is the law. So it's nothing, everyone supports it. It's the way it should be. As governor, you have to support that Constitution just as you support the Illinois Constitution. You can't pick and choose what you want to use today, what you want to use tomorrow. There's obviously some regulation has to go with concealed arms, but I don't think it's a very large thing. And most of the people already have weapons and probably want to have concealed weapons. So I'm not really sure what the issue is here. It's in the Constitution, and therefore it should be. Thank you.
Thank you. Dan Croft, please.
To the question is, what do we think the court is going to do? I think with the Heller decision that came down overturning the DC gun ban, I think there is a lot of reason to be excited that the Bill of Rights is actually going to come to Chicago. And that will be a great thing, especially as a Chicago resident currently, and somebody who's a handgun owner. I'm not going to tell you where they are, but I'm a handgun owner. But no, I think the Chicago gun ban is going to be overturned. You've seen some municipal gun bans in suburbs around Chicago already voluntarily give up their gun bans because they see the constitutional writing on the wall after a long struggle. I am a life member of the NRA. I support right to carry, not just because of the obvious constitutional basis for it, but also because it's good public policy. The states that have right to carry, starting with Florida 20 years ago, have seen their Class X felony rates decline precipitously faster than states with more restrictive gun laws like Illinois. And the city of Chicago, of course, is the best and the worst example of this, with routinely the highest per capita murder rates in the country, despite having a handgun ban. All that it has done, frankly, as Adam talked about, is make the power relationship between the law-abiding and the law-breaking decidedly on the favor of the law-breaking. That's not a good thing for our state. So I'm looking forward to the Chicago handgun ban being overturned and Illinoisans getting their full complement of rights as enshrined in our Constitution. Thank you.
Thank you. Randall Stuffelbein, please.
Well, I don't know if I can say what they're going to do. I definitely know what they should do is uphold and enforce the Constitution that guarantees our rights. It doesn't grant our rights to keep and bear arms. It guarantees the right that we already have to enforce that, to protect it. The Constitution, the federal Constitution talks about a well-regulated militia, and some people incorrectly associate weapons only for the military, but it says the right of the citizen, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. And we've seen that infringement all across this state specifically. And there's the one scary thing. The state constitution has a really scary clause in it. Section 122, which is the Illinois Second Amendment, if you will, it says, subject only to the police powers. Your right to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Did you catch that? As governor, I will strictly ignore the police action part of that. In fact, as governor, I would push to see an amendment applied to our Illinois state constitution to eliminate what I consider the unconstitutional clause within our constitution. And also, as governor, I would see us eliminate the FOID card. We are only one of 2 states in the nation that have a registration for gun ownership or even to buy ammunition. I would see that eliminated immediately and get us back to our constitutional rights.
Thank you. Rich Whitney, please.
Thank you. As far as predicting what the Supreme Court's going to do, I've been a lawyer for many years and I've given that up a long time ago. So I don't see much point in predicting. I do agree that based on their recent precedent, there is reason to be cautiously optimistic that they will again uphold Second Amendment principles. I ran, as part of my campaign in 2006, I ran part of the platform that we need to have right to carry in Illinois, as we have in 48 other states. So I think there's a lot of agreement on the panel so far about that issue. But we do have to face some political realities. One of the things that I also favor is local self-control. And let's face it, the problem we've run into in Illinois time and time again is you get support for this idea from southern and central Illinois, but then Cook County and some of the surrounding counties don't seem to like that, and you just simply cannot collect the votes. The way we're going to get it passed in Illinois is to say we will have right to carry in Illinois, but we'll also allow counties to opt out, recognizing the right of the people at the local level to make their own decisions regarding that. I think that's the way we're actually going to make progress in Illinois. But I do support the Second Amendment because I believe that a nation founded on liberty should not cede to the government the exclusive power to control armaments, particularly not a government that has brought us such things in recent years as the Patriot Act and attacks on habeas corpus and other attacks on our civil liberties. I think it is a very dangerous precedent to say that the government should have a monopoly on arms. And that's one of many reasons, in addition to the other public policy reasons that have been stated here, that I support the Second Amendment and I support the right of the citizens of Illinois to be able to carry arms. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Bill Walls, please.
Gun control, self-control. You know, you can't simply keep a community safe by taking guns away. You have to teach people to interact with one another in civil fashion. And until we make a commitment to ensure that people are respecting the rights of their neighbors, because your freedoms end where another's freedoms begin. Until we make certain that people are respectful of other people, we're going to have a problem. I've never seen a gun kill another person. It's people who are out of control. What does that lead us to? It leads us to fear. Fear means that people are afraid to see other people with guns because they don't know if they can exercise self-control. The bottom line, I have no clue what the Supreme Court is going to do. But at the end of the day, we need a careful registration policy, gun registration policy, that ensures that we have a chain of custody. So if your house is broken into and someone steals your gun and is later caught with that gun, the authorities know that that gun belongs to you and they can prosecute that person based upon the theft. If you don't have a chain of custody, you don't have stability in terms of gun ownership. But more importantly, self-control over gun control.
Thank you. And before moving on to the fourth question, I'd like to remind the candidates of how many rebuttal statements they have left. Rich Whitney, 2. Bill Walls, 1. Adam Andrzejewski, 1. Michael White, 3. Dan Proft, 1. And Randall Stufflebeam, 2.
Matt, we're all one of Michael White's.
So we're moving on to audience participation, our fourth question submitted by the audience member. And Michael White, you will be answering first. The question is, what should be done with the shuttered factories in southern Illinois?
Since I don't live in Southern Illinois, could you clarify that?
A member from the audience, would you like to stand up and clarify that?
I would. You just mentioned earlier about Maytag, some of the factories shutting down. losing a lot of jobs in Southern Illinois. And what would you do, and how would you come about that as governor, getting money down here to create some jobs?
Let's take a look at West Frankfort. Here's a community that's a coal community. I think they've managed to get 3 mines open right now. But because of what Washington, D.C. has in mind to do, I don't know how long that's going to last. What's happening to that community is that they're going to die out. And like I said, Maytag left. The state should try to figure out a way that we can keep these companies here. And now we're going to have these problems all in Southern Illinois. How are we going to get more businesses to Southern Illinois, just anywhere in Illinois? We're all hurting. And I think we have to go back to incentivizing business to come, reducing the taxes on business, simplifying how you do business in Illinois. And those are the types of things we're going to have to look at. I don't think there's an easy solution, but we have to make the state so it invites businesses to be here. Right now I don't find us an inviting state at all. And what's going to happen when this recession leaves, again, we're going to be sitting here while other states take off and move forward. So we're going to have to develop plans, and I think that's going to take to talking to small businesses. I talked to a small business just today. It was a landscape gentleman. And he said, it's killing me because now they're talking about a service tax. One of the candidates, not here, is talking about a service tax on small business. There'll be now a service tax on his lawn mowing business. He goes, I play the rules, I hire people, and now you're going to throw a service tax on me, and we have other people who are in this industry that aren't licensed, aren't bonded, are running, I'm going to go out of business because of that, and then I won't be hiring anyone. We'll lose those, they'll be on unemployment. So we have to figure out ways to make sure that we keep these businesses in business. Another service tax is not going to help them. But we have to figure out different ways. Maybe it's a standard fee for a year that they have to register, and then they get that money back at the end of the year. That way you can see who's actually working for the state, and as people hired. Because all the incentives should be to hire more employees, not just come to the state, but hire people. Thank you.
Thank you. Dan Croft, please.
So I talked a little bit about Indiana earlier. Let's talk about it again. In the last 2 years, the state of Indiana has brought $15 billion in foreign direct investment into that state. 2 new auto manufacturers, a new Nestle plant coming online. All businesses that would have been better cited for Illinois. We're the transportation hub of the Midwest. We used to be the manufacturing base of this nation. But those companies look at Illinois and they say, are you kidding me? No way. Indiana's close enough. Because I don't want to deal with that political culture. And even if I did, it doesn't matter because I can't make my numbers work. When it comes to the tax burdens that businesses face in this state, manufacturers, when it comes to the other systems that increase the cost of doing business in Illinois, workers' comp system, right? Our workers' comp costs for manufacturers, or business in Illinois generally, are 1.5 times what they are in Indiana. That's a huge cost for business. The trial lawyers, who have court systems in this state, like in Metro East and in Cook County, rigged for their benefit. That increases the cost of doing business. Mr. Stuffelbeam talked earlier about some of the highest gas prices in the nation that are always visited upon Illinois. That that's an input into business, particularly manufacturing. Our energy costs, that increase the cost of doing business. Until you change the cost structure for business in this state, we will continue to see businesses and families flee Illinois like it is on fire. That is what's happening. And they're not coming back. When Maytag closed in Galesburg 5 years ago, they didn't get a replacement. Right? And you're seeing John Deere reduce headcount here, but they're opening up facilities elsewhere. Caterpillar's reducing headcount here, but they're opening up a new factory in San Antonio. It is about that building block tax and spend policies that drive business decisions long term. Not one-time incentives, not a one-time cash infusion. Our tax and spend and borrow policies that drive investment decisions by the private sector long term. They have to be fundamentally rethought.
Thank you. Lady Stuffelbeam.
It's a twofold problem. There's a federal problem and there's a state problem. Federally, the problem is that our federal government is putting us in a global economy. They're supposed to be protecting the American product and the American labor. But we've got our federal government ascending to the CAFTA and the NAFTA and all these other international trade agreements that are driving corporations not only out of the state, but out of this country because they cannot compete. In fact, in 2006, when I ran for governor, I remember distinctly there was in my newspaper, the Belleville News Democrat, there was a full 2-page article about Illinois farmers moving down to Brazil so that they can farm because they can't afford to do it here in Illinois. We've got the highest taxation, we've got regulations that cost, and we've got subsidies. Why are we subsidizing our farmers? Because they can't afford to compete on the international market, because we've got a federal government that's not doing their job. Now, bring it back to Illinois. Like Dan mentioned, I said we got the highest gas taxes. How many of you have seen the ghost town areas that used to be thriving truck stops? Truckers are going through Illinois. They're not stopping and fueling because we've got the highest gas prices. Let's cut the taxes, get the truckers starting to do business here, and in 2006 and 2007, we saw Blagojevich raising the tax and levies to businesses, further driving them out because he says, well, I won't raise taxes on the people. So where did he go? He went to the businesses and raised their taxes. Let's cut them out. Let's bring the businesses back. Let's fight the federal government reasons why we are seeing our corporations leave not only our state and our country. Let's cut those taxes. Let's start inviting these companies and then we'll get those jobs, then we'll get the revenue, and then we'll be able to spend more.
Thank you. Rich Whitney, please.
I think on this question I'm going to have to disagree sharply with some of my colleagues here we've heard from so far. To me, we haven't identified the real source of the problem. The real source of the problem is the basis on which our economy is right now. It is dominated by this institution known as the corporation. The corporation has no loyalty to communities. It has no loyalty to any one particular state or any one particular country. If wages are cheaper somewhere else, if environmental regulations are lower somewhere else, no matter how much devastation it causes, they will leave and go elsewhere. We are not going to revive our economy in Illinois by joining in some type of competition with the other 49 states and India and China and Mexico to boot, to try to offer them more incentives, lower taxes, fewer regulations, in a race to the bottom that devastates all states and eventually is going to lead to ruination everywhere for working people. The way we need to do this is to start building alternatives to the corporate model. Things like worker-owned enterprises and cooperative enterprises and small businesses. And the way we need to do that is to use the powers that we have right here in the state of Illinois. One thing we could do, if you're talking specifically about the question of shuttered factories from runaway shops that corporations have already abandoned, is the idea of using our power of eminent domain to take control of these facilities and turn them over to the workers who used to be employed on them to operate them as worker-owned businesses with a little bit of state support. That would be one thing concretely we could do. Instead of the abuse of eminent domain, where it's used, to condemn someone's property to bring in a Walmart, how about using it to reopen productive factories, to build the things we need to be building in the state of Illinois, like wind power, solar power, and other things we need to get us off our oil dependency. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bill
Walls, please.
Thank you. Our problem in Illinois is social and economic. Everybody remembers the phrase, "not in my backyard." We disinvited businesses, corporations, companies, manufacturing plants from Illinois because we didn't want to see those smokestacks. We didn't want those trucks rolling down our streets. We complained about those things. The thing that we have to do now is welcome them in and fight for the proliferation of cleaner, greener, more energy efficient, and technologically advanced manufacturing plants. We need public-private partnerships that help to fund the reinvestment in manufacturing here in Illinois. I mentioned before, our capital budget, $31 billion. Less than $1 billion of that is committed to economic development. You have to make a greater commitment to economic development and the building of plants that create jobs for people. Yes, we have to participate in the global economy. Yes, we have to reduce our wages, but we also have to reduce our prices. Housing prices are currently down. The cost of gas is down from where it was before and not as low as it should be. The cost of goods and services is down artificially. We have to fight to keep those things low, purposefully. It's called benign disinflation. When we do that, we become competitive with companies and corporations all around the world, because our workers end up getting more bang for their buck. We have to be smart when it comes to building our economy and creating jobs here in Illinois.
Thank you. Adam Andrzejewski.
There's a simple principle. Our founding fathers knew it well, and America's executed on it very well for the first 230 plus years of our history. As government expands, freedom contracts. I lived this story. I grew up at or near the poverty level in a small town of Herscher. I was able to go from Herscher to Hinsdale in 15 years. And by starting a company, being an entrepreneur, providing opportunity, employment, to be able to live the promises of Illinois and the dream of America. The last thing that our entrepreneurs and small business owners and workers and employees need is a government bureaucrat telling you what to do with your commercial property through eminent domain, or picking winners and losers in the private sector. The problem with Illinois is that government has expanded, and we need to limit government here in Illinois. Now, we're talking about part of the question was what government program or government money for the shuttered factories? Again, that's not the solution. What we need to do is incentivize the private sector to be able to grow jobs. 96% of the businesses here in Illinois are small businesses. I lived this story. My company was in 3 states. I saw the effects of policy, of the trial bar having too much power. We're second out of the 50 states in a judicial hellhole. My phone books in Northwest Indiana grew very well. Same thing with Wisconsin. The books in Illinois, they grew slower. It's because of policy. The attorneys, the unions, it's a high cost of doing business. When I did the Chicago Tea Party, they rented a sound system, $500. The cost of the union electrician to hit the on button for that system in Chicago, $800. That's playing out throughout the entire economy. One of my biggest supporters has 300 employees, and if he moves 35 miles away over to Indiana, he'll save $750,000. It's policy. We need to limit government.
Thank you. I see the first hand that came up after the questions, all questions answered, was Mr. Michael White. And then stuff will be.
I am a capitalist, so let's get that out there. I believe that I have the right to run a business where I want to run a business. If I was a business and I saw the budget in this state, if I'm a business and I saw the corruption in this state, I'm a business and I see the children are getting shot in Chicago, is this where I want to do business? That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Randall Staplebeam?
Well, I do concur with, I do concur with Rich that part of the problem is corporation, money, the big money factor. In fact, money plays in our politics. No surprise, right? How do we eliminate that? My campaign reform is very, in case you didn't catch it the first few times, very simple. If you can't vote for me, you can't fund me. Think about it. If you can't vote for me, you can't fund me. This eliminates all the PACs. This eliminates corporate money. This eliminates people from other places that don't have anything to do with my constituency. Eliminate the reason why corporations have power in this country, and you eliminate the reason why they're taking over. Get rid of that, have our government start conducting themselves according to the Constitution, protecting our American labor, protecting our American product, and you'll see an entire change overnight.
Thank you. Mr. Bill Walls, did you raise your hand before? Oh, sorry, Rich, couldn't tell. Mr. Rich Whitney, please.
I'd like to take issue with, Adam's principle that when government expands, business contracts. Sounds very appealing, but really the answer is it depends. When government expands in giving money to the military-industrial complex and being wasted on corporate welfare and large contracts to firms like Halliburton and Blackwater, and when government expands in attacking your civil liberties to spy on you through the national security state, yes, I agree that's a problem. But when government is expended on things that people need that help business, like infrastructure, an efficient transportation system that includes public transit, in schools and education. You know, look at the old GI Bill. For every dollar that government spent on the original GI Bill, the government made, that is, the people made back to the Treasury, $7 back. There is such a thing as investing in people wisely. There is such a thing as an intelligent public sector that is needed for the private sector to flourish.
Thank you. And moving on to our fifth and final question for the evening. We'll be starting with Mr. Dan Proft. Excellent question from the audience, might I add. If you had to vote for one of the other candidates on this panel, besides yourself, who would that be and why?
I have to be honest with you, I haven't given very much thought to such a horrific possibility as that. I think I'm going to lose sleep tonight, even contemplating the question that was asked. No, honestly, all seem like fine gentlemen. I know Adam better than the other gentleman, but I'm a Republican. I've already said that if I am unsuccessful in this primary, I'm going to support the Republican nominee. Now, the other Republicans that are running, I would be less excited about supporting than Adam. So if there was one person that could not be, if I could not be elected, as tragic a case as that would be for this state, nothing any of you want to see, I know. My vote would go for Adam.
Thank you for answering the question. Tobin.
Well, it kind of actually steals the thunder from my closing comments, because I was actually going to deal with this very specific thing. Because in my opinion, it is the Republicans and Democrats who have put us where we are today. And in fact, in terms of the governor's race, in my opinion, as long as we get another Republican and another Democrat, as fine as these guys are, unless it's one of these two, okay? And God, we're going down the tubes. Folks, in my opinion, we need an outsider, completely outsider, not just somebody who says, I'm an independent, but I got to run in the Republican Party, or I'm going to try to reform the Republican Party. Look, I've watched it for years and years and years, and quite frankly, I think it's a delusional idea that we're going to reform either of these parties. We need something outside, we need something new, we need something fresh that's not a part of the machinery. But we also need somebody who can put together the parties, going outside the party, the partisanship and all of that. Build bridges. I'm already building bridges across the state with other legislators that I believe we could actually start doing things. In fact, I was recognized at a Republican picnic here recently. Why? Because they're looking for somebody to untie their hands. Most people that get elected want to come in and do the right thing. I don't think they come in inherently evil. But I think we have a system that ties their hands and they realize they can no longer do it. We need somebody that comes out from the outside and can untie their hands. So it would have to be, if you don't elect me, then you need to look at either one of the other independents or even a third party who's going to be on the ballot. Elect one of us. If it's not me, one of us, so that we can make a change in this state.
Thank you. Rich Whitney.
Thank you. Very difficult question. I think, normally the way I respond to that is, well, I would abstain. Because that's what I've historically done. If there is not a candidate that I consider to be a genuine progressive candidate in the ballot, I have abstained. I don't like doing lesser of two evil voting. And I agree with Randy to that extent, that to me, we all know that there are good Republicans and good Democrats as individuals, but to me the institutions are the problem. So when I refer to lesser evils, I hope you understand I'm not speaking about anyone here. I'm speaking about the institutional problem. And accordingly, my general practice is to abstain. If we're to examine things as far as public policy, however, I would have to say that Mr. Walz probably comes closest, at least on some issues, to the things I've been talking about. I've been impressed with what he had to say about education. I think we have a lot in common there. And I would invite Mr. Walz, if he does not obtain the Democratic Party nomination, to consider coming over to the Green Party, where your talents will be put to much better use, and I suspect you will be much better appreciated.
And conveniently next, Mr. Bill Walz.
Thank you. Government is a hierarchy of respective relationships, interacting and creating enforceable laws. And government's mandate is to provide for the common defense, ensure civility, and to take care of those who are weak, afflicted, infirmed, or disoriented. It takes a very unselfish person to be able to serve people with those things in mind. And to be perfectly honest with you, these are very fine gentlemen that I'm sitting here with. People who've given a lot of thought and consideration to very tough and difficult issues. But if I was not the nominee, and it's not because he would vote for me, our philosophies are a lot alike. I am a fiscal conservative, but I'm also concerned about people. And my attitude is, let's figure out a way to cut costs without cutting jobs, cut state costs without cutting programs, and still deliver to people the hope that they need for prosperity in their own lives. So my vote would also have to go to Mr. Whitney.
Very interesting. Adam Andrzejewski. Good luck.
Well, I think the simplest way to answer it is just to take a long time, but to get to Dan Brown. The end of the Star-Spangled Banner ends at the end of the first paragraph with a question mark. And the line reads, "Over the land of the free and the home of the brave, question mark." And it's always in question. And every single person at this table is engaging in a debate on the issues, the salient issues of a state crisis, and everyone's to be complimented. Now, this is a primary battle that Dan and I face in the Republican primary, a battle for the heart and soul of our primary. And we are running against business as usual Republicans here in Illinois. We each have to make our own arguments on reform, but we are the two carrying that message to our party, and we are making an impact. So at the end of this primary, I take the responsibility of we the people. And when the people speak, if Dan's the nominee, I endorse. Now, the other reason I endorse is because Dan put up an issues tab on his website. Must have gone up this afternoon. That's good. Now, we are leading on this. None of the other business as usual Republicans, for all of their experience in Springfield, running for governor, were going to tell you what they were going to do as governor. I declared March 1st with 15,000 words of simple, clear policy solutions to solve the long-term problems. Dan has the issues tab with his issues and his policies up there. You can now give us scrutiny. And I'm happy to lead on this. There's other Republicans here in the race that have just gotten into the race. No issues tab. They're going to try to buy the primary. They're not doing forums like Dan and I are going to do and are doing. Haven't been on the trail. Haven't sat with we the people. And it's a shame. So I would endorse Dan.
Thank you. Michael White.
Both have issues. This is a tough question. First, I want to start off, conservatives don't have a problem with people. I think conservatives support people just in a different way. We support people through empowerment. And empowerment is very important to me, and I think it's important to the people who understand what I'm about. I would support Randy, and I would support Randy because he is an independent like myself. I like a lot of what Randy says. And I can't support a party right now because I'm just afraid of the party. I'm leery of parties. I think we need people in office that are really going to change the system. And I think they're going to shock the system. When an independent gets into office, it's going to send a shock wave throughout Springfield. And I think it'll open many doors for other people to say, this can be done. Thank you.
Yes. Please stand prompt. This is the final rebuttal statement.
I'm not going to rebut Adam's endorsement. Okay, I'm not going to do that. But I did want to say something about third parties, okay? And this whole idea that I can't support a party. It is intellectually lazy to label everybody as the same who is under one banner. Ron Paul ran as a Republican, but it was Ron Paul the same as John McCain? I don't think so. Right? And Adam and I are not the same as some of the myopic, navel-gazing establishment Republicans that we're running against either. And that we're not the same as those guys who've been in Springfield for 15 years, going along to get along while this state has been destroyed from within. So, I understand the appeal of third parties as a way to reject the two-party system that has destroyed this state. And we, both Adam and I, have the courage to go after our own party, because it's about the principles that are supposed to inform our policies. And if Republicans don't live up to those principles, then they need to be held to account just as the Democrats need to be held to account. So I would just caution against this kind of blanket rejection of anybody who wears an R, or in some cases a D, just because they're associated with a party. I mean, take the time to actually look at what we're saying and what we're willing to do before you just throw the baby out with the bathwater, so to speak. Thank you.
Please. And Adam next.
It's not really a total rebuttal, and I don't entirely disagree with what Dan had just said. But I call your attention to 2006 and who the Republicans and who the Democrats elected. And I call your attention to who the front runners are in the two major parties. Now, if I had to cast my vote...
Who are they?
Yeah, who are they? Well, we know who's gotten the nods. Yeah, here's our front runners. If I had to cast my vote for an R or a D, I got to tell you, in fact, I was tempted somewhat back when I was at Lauson's picnic to say that I would probably endorse Adam, because me and him have seen eye to eye on just about every single issue. In fact, if he gets elected and he becomes a primary, he's probably the hardest that I would try to be able to separate myself from. So I hope he doesn't get elected. For selfish reasons. But my issue here is, take a look what happens in the primaries. And don't cast your vote for the lesser of two evils. Don't just buck up to the party system just because they're there. Vote for the individual who best represents your values, and you won't waste your vote.
Thank you. Adam Andrzejewski, please.
back on March 1st when I declared for the office of governor, it was an impossible task, and this is why. I knew that I needed to reform my own party before I turned around and reformed the 5th largest state and most corrupt state in America, and that's impossible. But we've proven over the course of the last 8 months that it is achievable. There's 4 problems with my Republican Party, and you've seen an abject lack of leadership and corruptions within my party. I'm aiming to cure those 4 problems. It's a lack of leadership. It's an abject lack of ideas. We're bankrupt on ideas. It's a dearth of workers on the ground. Thousands of precinct committeeman seats lie vacant because they haven't had anything to be excited about within our party. People are craving principled leadership, and it's why I'm in the race. The Republican funding network is broken. I'm repairing it. Chicago aldermen fundraise more than Republicans fundraise for governor. So all of those 4 problems, by curing those on my race for governor, I am the most electable Republican in this race.
Thank you. Bill Walls?
You'll understand, we can't waste our rebuttals. But I'd like to say, I drove a long way to get here from the city of Chicago, and I'm so thankful I came, just to look into your faces and see the encouragement from you individually as we stand here and talk about the issues that we hope are important to each and every one of you. Made the trip worthwhile. I'd like to simply say thank you for welcoming me into your community. Thank you for allowing me to speak to the issue, speak from my heart, even though you may not agree with everything that I say. Thanks for being polite. Thank you so very much, because I'll take back with me the memories of your looks, your nods, your glances. I'd also like to thank this fine organization, Free and Equal Elections, for having the fortitude to stand up and fight for democracy at its finest. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. Yes, Mr. Michael White.
Well, I have to rebut Dan here. He's saying, and he's right, he's absolutely right here. I'm telling you to vote for someone just because he's an independent. Well, at the same time, he just said he was voting for someone in his party because he's part of the party, and he said he would support the party. One way as an independent, I'm supporting the role of independents everywhere. I want independents to run for mayor, town council, school board. It's time people get active. And they don't have to be active in a party. They can be active as individuals and do their job for this state.
Mr. Rich Whitney and Michael White are the only individuals that have one more rebuttal statement left. Rich and Michael.
You know, I'm not going to rebut, people's choices.
Right.
Vote for,
Okay, so we are moving on to closing statements. We have permission from Mr. Rich Whitney. So, all right, we are going to start with Mr. Randall Stufflebeam for the closing statement. 2 minutes, please.
Why a third party? I already mentioned that just a little bit ago, is that I believe there is a machinery, and even though we've got some fine gentlemen right here, I question whether the Republican Party are going to do the right thing, or the Democrat Party is going to do the right thing and elect these fine gentlemen. In fact, I've seen it time and time and time and time and time again that it won't happen. And so we have to have somebody outside the machinery to be an alternative to that option that will be trying to be shoved down our throats. In fact, not only as just a pure alternative, but it is my opinion that we must elect a third party or independent candidate, especially in the role of governor, who can take and free the hands of every single one, Democrat, Republican, Green Party, whoever, free their hands to allow them to fulfill what they got elected to do in the first place. It is my contention that most people throw their hat in the ring not to be, oh, I see the big money up there and I'm going to make some few bucks. No, they do it because they say, I believe in the principles and I want to protect my people and I'm going to go in there and I'm going to be the person to change. And then they find that when they get there, their hands are tied. Well, my friends, it's no longer time for a change that we can believe in. It's time for restoration that can restore our boundaries to our state and federal government. The mandates of the Constitution are very easy to understand. In fact, the federal document fit on one page. It's not that difficult. What's difficult is find somebody who will buck up and hold people accountable to the supreme laws of the land. So I stand here before you as one person who will hold people accountable, and we will take this state and eventually our nation back.
Just a moment, we're going to move on next to Mr. Rich Whitney. No worries.
Okay.
Yes.
Random draw. You know, when I got dressed this morning, I put on this black shirt, and I remembered that a political advisor of mine once told me, oh, you can't wear a black shirt, you're a candidate. You just don't do that. But then I thought about it and I left it on because I remembered a great American who passed away recently by the name of Johnny Cash, who was known as the Man in Black, and he wrote a song about that. And I thought that there's a connection between that song and this campaign. Because he wrote, I wear the black for the poor and the beaten down, living in the hopeless, hungry side of town. I wear it for the prisoner who has long paid for his crime, but is there because he's a victim of the times. And he goes on and he says, I wear it for the sickly and lonely old, and mourning for the lives that could have been, and for the thousands who have died, believing that the Lord was on their side, and another 100,000 have died, believing that we were all on their side. And I thought, you know, this is very appropriate because as a candidate for the Green Party, these are the people I want to try to stand up for who aren't being represented today, who have been pushed out of the system. And I'd like to remind people about what the preamble to our Illinois Constitution states about what is the obligation of government. It is to eliminate poverty and inequality, assure legal, social, and economic justice, and provide opportunity for the fullest development of the individual. We cannot do that unless we put people in government who are going to ensure that our government is devoted to providing every child born in the state of Illinois an equal opportunity to thrive. And that means things like investing in people, investing in education. That means creating more economic opportunities for people so we have a full employment economy. That means things like providing health care for everyone as a birthright of being born into the wealthiest nation in the world. These are some of the things I'm going to be fighting for in this campaign. So I'm wearing the black because these are the people that I'm going to be standing up for in campaign 2010. Thank you.
Thank you. Bill Walls.
You know, these are tough economic times, and nobody knows what anybody in this room is going through in their own personal lives. So whatever you're going through, I wish you much success, and we'll do our part to make life better for you. But rather than be intimidated by this turbulent economic environment, or be victimized by its negative effects, Illinoisans must do that which is smart and prudent to improve our state's economic condition. We must unthink our economics and develop a smart economy that guarantees every Illinois resident a better quality of life. We have to establish irreproachable public safety services, develop and efficiently maintain our public infrastructure, enrich the Department on Aging to ensure the health and well-being of our senior citizens, provide a superior public school education for each and every individual child, transform the Department of Commerce and Economic Development to create training for every adult. We have to make certain that we're not over-incarcerating our population and taking fathers and mothers out of the homes and depriving them of the opportunity to raise their children. We have to be sensible and we have to be smart in everything that we do because these are tough, tough times. Most importantly, our job is to unify this state by promoting cultural and diversity sensitivity amongst people of all ages, races, socioeconomic backgrounds, all religious persuasions, all sexual orientations, all physical and mental disabilities and limitations, because none of us are any better than the rest of us. We have to make this one Illinois, and we have to fight together to become number one in every major category. Thank you.
Madam Andrzejewski?
As government expands, freedom contracts. I grew up at or near the poverty level in Herscher, and if government expands, social mobility contracts. A poor kid from Herscher can't make it to Hinsdale if he wants to move to Hinsdale. Many people want to stay on the farm, and that's good too. And government is expanding exponentially here in Illinois. Over the course of the last 10 years, our population's grown by less than 4%. But the state government budget has grown by 45%. And let me tell you a story from the campaign trail as to what that expansion of government has meant. I sat down with one of the most successful and prominent business attorneys in DuPage County. And what he told me is that he has a fiduciary responsibility to his business clients to tell them to move out of Illinois if Illinois declines any further. And people are voting with their feet to leave this state. This is a choice in this election between patronage and ever-increasing salaries of government employees, pensions of government employees, funded by ever-increasing borrowing and ever-increasing taxes and ever-increasing budgets. And as government expands, freedom and liberty and job growth contract. So I want to ask you a question. Why do you fight, and what are you fighting for? I'm going to give you the tools to fight. I'm going to open up the books of Springfield, 100% process and financial transparency so you can see the spending, so together we can cut the wasteful spending, so we can actually create an environment here in Illinois that grows jobs, grows our economy, and eliminates corruption. And we'll spend $100 million on a forensic audit to deliver an investment return of 30 to 50 times on that investment. And it's less about the money, although the money is important. It's about our reputation and ending corruption with your help here in the land of Lincoln and Reagan. Thank you, and God bless you. God bless our Illinois.
Thank you. Michael White?
Well, thank you all for participating in what is our great democracy. I'm taking a little bit different approach here. I've talked to around 10,000 Illinoisans, probably in the last couple of months. And the first question isn't whether I'm going to room with Blagojevich or Ryan, but it is, are you honest? And what a very difficult question to prove. I can answer, yes, I'm honest. I'm sure all these gentlemen sitting here are honest. But how do you prove that you're honest? It tells you there's a huge lack of faith in what is our government. And we have to work to restore that together. So the only way for you to find out whether I am honest is to get to know me. So please check out my website. But you need to talk to my wife. She couldn't be here tonight because she's been working 12 hours a day. My son, he's got homecoming tomorrow. But you need to talk to us and get to know us and who we are, what we've experienced. I've lived in McCanda, DeSoto, Bloomington Normal, born and raised in Kankakee, and now live in Lake County. So I've lived through the entire state. I think that's the type of person we need to run this office, someone who has experienced the state as a whole. I served in the military around 20 years, in the Illinois National Guard. The governor runs the Illinois National Guard. Active duty Air Force. My wife and I both understand what military families go through because we've been there. We understand what the military goes through because we've been there. And that's a very important role. I work as a business manager for a pediatric speech therapy company. These kids range from all different problems that they have. It isn't just speech. They may have other issues. So I see what parents have to deal with. I see the divorce rate in these families because of what happens with these children. I see what the state is doing to the company to which I work for. 7 to 8 months behind. Are we going to have to turn kids away? Are we going to have to stop doing business with the state of Illinois? We won't, because we care about kids. I was a substitute teacher. That means I have a basic understanding of the education system. I've worked with other teachers. I've worked with administrators. So those are the types of things you need to know about all the candidates here. Where they come from, what they do, and does it sound like someone like you? Because that is who we need in this office. Thank you.
Thank you. And our final closing statement, Dan Proft.
Thank you for hosting this event. Thank you all for coming out. Mr. Stuffelbeam said that he thinks people go into public service for the right reasons generally. Well, he needs to spend some more time in Springfield because that ain't the case. Let me tell you. What's happening in this state is you're getting scammed. When the politicians tell you that Springfield is broken, that state government's broken, when something is broken, that means it is not producing what it is intended to produce. But that's not the problem with state government. You think Mike Madigan's a moron? You think he doesn't know what he's doing? He's been a speaker for 25 years on accident? No, he knows what he's doing. So if he knows what he's doing, then it necessarily logically follows that state government must be producing precisely what he intends it to produce. And that's the case. State government is not about educating kids. It is not about creating a better job climate. It is not about providing quality health care to low-income folks. It is not about investing in our infrastructure. You know what it's about? Guaranteed jobs and secure pensions for the patronage armies who in turn provide the political support that sustain and advance the careers of the 9 Chicago Democrats who run the show in the state. And if you don't understand you're getting scammed, then you never get to the right prescriptions. Spending caps and tax cuts. Reordering our K-12 system by changing how the money flows and who gets to make spending decisions. Empowering the 1.7 million low-income folks who are Medicaid eligible so that they take and are forced to take dominion over their own lives by assisting them with buying private health insurance in the open marketplace. Those are the system change policies that we need to pursue. And if we speak with moral clarity, the people who play by the rules in this state, instead of parsing words, if we are not content to tinker on the margins to manage the decline of this state, but are willing to get behind our overarching ideas that reorder the political balance of power in this state, then what we have currently does not need to be. This is not inevitable what has happened to this state. The Chicago Democrats' offices are not their birthrights. If people who play by the rules stand up and demand better, then we can have better in Illinois. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, if I had to vote for one of these candidates on the panel, I guess it would be all 6 of you. Cheating. It's the way it'll be, because the fact that all 6 of you are here tonight, speaking as the founder and chair of the Free and Equal Elections, shows that you are truly here for the people. You're participating in a historical event of which the other, I believe, 7 candidates have declined to do so. They have declined from putting out more voices, choices to the people. And that alone shows that those candidates, excluding those who have valuable reasons for not being here, that they are probably not suitable for wanting to change the country in the future. So I want to end on the note that through the live feed, all of you watching tonight, spread the news, grassroots, forward this debate to everybody. Free and Equal, andequal.org, will be hosting and sponsoring many more debates in the future. We will be working with great organizations, let me remind you, like Liberty Restoration Project, also a sponsor tonight. Thank you for your truly all-partisan participation in making this happen. Also, Republic Media TV, thank you so much for helping us out with the technical feeds, and also all of you supporters out there for this debate. That's what we could ask for. So we will be, again, sponsoring, organizing more debates nationwide. This is the first of historical of many more to come, as I will be focusing the rest of my life on these efforts, not only for debates, but ballot access reform, challenging laws through lobbying of state legislatures, court challenges, ballot initiatives nationwide, and even running for California Secretary of State. So thank you very much for your time, and I appreciate you. And I want to also, please, everybody that's here right now, please, there are 3 dynamite speakers that are following right after this, And they're definitely, you should watch them because they're great. I will sit here and be very excited to sit in the front row, so they will be speaking right after this event. So thank you for your time.
Hey,